Hello friends, welcome back to Witch Wednesdays and another day of Vlogmas. You are watching Vlogmas Day 11, which is going to be a reading vlog. And I am filming this intro and then the ending after I already filmed the reading vlog and read like all of the books and decided to include my 2023 best and worst books of the year, both fiction and witchcraft. So that will be coming up later. So this is going to be a very long vlog. I already know that the footage I think is at like 28 minutes already, and that does not even include the ending where I talk about what my final thoughts on the books. So settle in for a very long vlog, and I will have timestamps below so you can see if you want to watch like any of the reading footage, if you want to see what books I'm reading, or if you just want to skip to best and worst books of 2023. But I am going to start with the reading, so let's go over to the reading vlog and the 4 books that I chose. Here are the 4 books that I picked for the day, 2 witchcraft and 2 fiction. I thought that was like a nice balance for what I want to be reading today. And of course, I also have my coffee because coffee is essential. This is my first one of the day, but there will be more, of course, an essential part of a reading day. And I've got my candle. Today I chose this Yulmus in Terracin by Serpent and Flame candle. I'll have that link below. And obviously Throne of Glass themed. It's a wood wick candle, so it like crackles when it burns, and it definitely does smell like Yule. So I thought it was perfect for the season and a reading vlog. First up, I think I'm gonna go with The Wishing Game by Meg Schaefer because I have been wanting to read this one, which is billed as a Willy Wonka for adults. So you can read what it says here on the back, but essentially it is just a reclusive author who hasn't written in a while has decided to write a book, but rather than put it out to the world, he is offering some fans a chance to win it instead, to come to win this game that he has going on, and then the winner will take home that book. And we follow the story of Lucy, who wants to be that winner for various reasons, not just because she loved the book as a child, but as she is going through her story, she has lots of reasons for wanting to win that book and like better her situation in life. So I thought this sounded like an interesting read. I am this much through it, and there is not a lot of action yet. Like, we are not yet to the game and the book and the storyline, so I feel like this is a lot more telling rather than showing, which is not my favorite. And I'm a little more than halfway. I do like the story. It is heavy-handed with the Wonka, but I do like it. It's still like a good story, and I am interested. So obviously going to finish, I'm almost there. Decided to do final reviews at the end. So next up, I am going to start The Lovely and the Lost, which is by Jennifer Lynn Barnes, and I love her other series, The Naturals and The Inheritance Games, so I thought I would pick up this one, which is just a standalone, but since I enjoy this author, I figure I would like this. And it is the story that follows a young girl, Kira, and her brother, and she was found in the woods as a child, and the woman who found her ended up raising her along with her son, and they trained search and rescue dogs. So in this book, we are coming full circle, and there is another missing girl in the woods, and so they are going with their search and rescue dogs to find this, and then all of Kira's sort of memories of that time are coming back, and she just really wants to find this girl. So that is the premise of this book. So I thought that sounded interesting. Let's dive in. So far, I'm at probably the same point that I was in The Wishing Game, and we are way further into the plot and way more into the action, and that's what I like about Jennifer Lynn Barnes. She is that sort of author that does the showing rather than telling, and that is what I prefer in my books. So at that same point, we are so much further into this story. So I thought that was an interesting contrast. I already like this one better than I liked The Wishing Game just because of that alone. And I am not quite halfway, but I think it is time to break for lunch. I did a lot of reading, and again, I really like this story so far, but I need some food, so I think it's a good break time. Finish that, full review at the end, and now I'm on to my witchcraft books, first of which is Crystal Magic for the Modern Witch, which is by the same author as Modern Witch, Devin Hunter, and this is just all about crystals instead of his first book, which was like more broad. And I love the Modern Witch book. I love the photos in it and the information, so I thought I wanted to pick up this version as well. And look at how it starts. Good start. Like, look at these pictures and the beautiful crystals. I just love that in a book. I like when it has beautiful imagery. And so far, it has a lot of great information inside as well. I am liking what I'm reading so far. I think it's really interesting, and it's really going in depth in addition to just being the pretty pictures. I like when a book has both. It can offer good information and good photography. Next up is Thrifty Witch, magic for the penny pinching practitioner. And I thought that this sounded like fun as well. It really, on the back, seems to focus on not needing any sort of tools for your practice. And I absolutely appreciate that. You know how much I talk about that in the podcast, and it goes then into foraging and using things that you find around your house. So I thought that this would be a fun read as well, because I think we all know I spend too much on witchcraft supplies. So let's see what this has to offer. Here's the one that I talked about on the back, the liquid eyeliner sigils, and I thought that this was so much fun. This is such like a fun little idea. And yes, eyeliner is expensive. However, like if you already have it around and it needs to be used up, it's getting old, like that's such a great use for it. So, and my candle still going strong. Okay, full reviews. Fiction books. I liked The Lovely and the Lost better than The Wishing Game. So Wishing Game was about a 3, and The Lovely and the Lost was about a 4. It's not my favorite Jennifer Lynn Barnes, but I thought that it was really good, a really fun story. The Wishing Game, like I said, like when comparing the two, it just suffers from that telling rather than showing. Like the plot just didn't move forward enough, and I thought it was such an interesting premise and so many like fun things that you could have done with it, but it just didn't live up to it. Like a lot of it was that sort of game that you go through, and I'm not giving away any plot spoilers here, like that's exactly what it talks about. So when you know going into it that it is this Willy Wonka-esque story, that you want to see all of the games, and some of them are like off page. They're like, we did this, and we did this, and now we're here, and here's where the points stand, and it's like, well, show us all of that, because that's like the kind of the fun part of the story, and we're just missing that aspect. So didn't like that as much. And then there was one little part at the end. It's not exactly essential to the storyline, and like the way that it was tied up, I think if you have read this, you'll know what I'm talking about. There's just like one little part in the end, and that did not need to happen that way, and I just did not like that at all. So that was like a bad like little part of the ending. But it was like a fine story. I just didn't like it as much as I thought it was going to. But Lovely and the Lost, I did enjoy, and I thought that was really well written, and I really liked the characters in that. The brother, Jude, is the best character. There's always like an Instagram like meme that goes around that the golden retriever personality is always best friends with the black cat personality, which is true in my life. I am the black cat personality, and my friends are golden retrievers, and I love them for it. And in books, I always identify with the black cat personality, and in this book, it's the main character, that's Kira, and Jude is the golden retriever. But since I like identify with that character, my favorite characters always end up being the golden retriever personalities, and that is Jude to a T, and I love him, and he's just so much fun. So love that character in this book. And overall, really enjoyed the storyline, the pacing, the plot. I thought was all top notch. It just wasn't my personal favorite Jennifer Lynn Barnes, and like it just couldn't give it a 5 for that reason. There was just like a couple of little things that kept it from being a true 5 for me, but otherwise like a great read. I do recommend that one. Loved the Crystal Magic by Devin Hunter. I thought that was a really fun one. It is in line with the first one, so if you like the Modern Witch book, then you are going to like this one, and I do find them really accessible, easy to read, easy to do the spells and rituals that are in there. Got a lot of great information, a lot of beautiful photos, and I just like that in my witchcraft books because it makes me more likely to pick it up again and reference it and do the things that are in it because it's got the beautiful visuals to go along with it. So definitely recommend that one. That was a great read. And I enjoyed Thrifty Witch as well. Way more, that I would say like maybe 60 to 65%, like the first part of the book is like no tools whatsoever. So it is about energy and intuition and intention setting, and I love that. Like you don't need anything. And so if you are a beginner, or if you struggle with that and you struggle with like trusting your intuition or setting really good intentions before you dive into a spell, then you are going to love that book because there's so much great information on that and so many exercises in each chapter that will help you with those things. So I love that. And then the rest of it, like the smaller part of it, There is about like foraging and finding items around you and using what you have around your house and not having to spend money on witchcraft tools, and the idea of like you can use these different things instead. And it has like the spells in there for you to try out and do those different things. Like you saw the eyeliner sigil working with that. So I thought that that was a fun read. It was really a great amount of information and exercises on that, like I said, energy, intuition, all of those things, which I always talk about as those being the essentials and like the base knowledge of a practice. So love that section. And then I had a lot of fun with the foraging and finding items and like using what you have around your house. There are a lot of different ideas in there that I want to try. So 2 winners for witchcraft books today. And now best and worst books of 2023. Hello. Okay, I decided to include best and worst books of this year just because I already have one vlog on books. I figured this would be a second one. Don't need a third one, so let's include all of the information in it together. So I decided, as I am casually sitting here hanging out with the dogs, I've got Levi and Hawkeye today, that I was just going to do a quick and casual chat about my best and worst books of 2023. And I know that it is only December, early mid-December, and I could definitely have some different best and worst books of the year coming in the next couple of weeks, but I have read a lot this year and I do have a lot of opinions on those things, so I thought that we would dive into it. So yeah, this will just be part of the reading vlog. It might be someplace in the middle, I might stick it at the end. Editing Stephanie will have to make that decision. So let's start with worst books of the year because I'd rather end on a high note. So worst books is actually a much shorter list because when I say worst books, I am not including books that I did not finish. So if I just got a couple pages in and shelved it and I was like, you know what, this is not for me, I don't include it on this list because I never actually finished it and read it, ranked it, because obviously if I didn't finish, then it's like a 0 or 1 star, but it's not really an accurate representation of the book. So yeah, if it's a DNF, I just shelve it and move on. So those won't be included on the list. These are only books that I finished. So I'm going to start with the fiction reads and then move into the witchcraft books. Now, I will say that for both best and worst reads of 2023, these are books that I read in 2023. So it doesn't mean that they were necessarily published in 2023. It just means that I read them this year. And I say that because I think all of my worst fiction books are not from this year. The first 2 that I'm going to mention is not liking it at all, and I think I gave them 1 star, are 2 that are incredibly popular. So this is going to be a very unpopular opinion, and I will absolutely be in the minority. But 2 of my least favorite books this year that I felt like I suffered through were The Night Circus and The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. 2 hugely popular books, and I disliked both of them. I did not like The Night Circus at all, and I thought with like the whole magic circus aspect that it was going to be really up my alley, but it is not at all like what is billed on the back. That it's billed as like this slow burn, enemies-ish to lovers or whatever, like romance. The romance is in like the last 20 pages of the book. Like it's just, I get where it was like building up to it, but it like follows their like dual timelines and they like never interact until the end, and it's just, I don't know, I didn't like it. I was bored the whole time, and I get that it's like really beautiful atmospheric writing, but the plot, like I am a plot person and it's just not there. So I really hated The Night Circus, and I was particularly disappointed by that. And similarly, I did not like The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, and that was another one that I just think they're like overwritten, and I don't like it because there's no plot. I just can't stick with books like that. They're just not fun for me to read. There's no story there. I just got really bored reading both of those, and I know that they're hugely popular and that's going to be an unpopular opinion, but they are my worst books of the year. Another worst book, which like I don't even know if I should include it because like the worst is like the entire series, except I finished it, so is it like that bad? But yes, it is, and that is the Crave series, and I just had to. You see it like all the time on Book Talk and Bookstagram or whatever, and other books being compared to the Crave series, and it's like, you know, Vampire School. And it's terrible. It is so terrible. Every single book is terrible. The story is terrible. The plot is terrible. The characters are terrible. The writing is terrible. But it's like so addicting to read, but not enough that I would give it 5 stars, because there are books that like I don't like, but like have like those qualities of being terribly written or something. But like the story is just like so compelling that I want to keep going. One of those would be Zodiac Academy. Zodiac Academy is legit terrible. However, I rank those higher stars because I can't, like I have to keep reading them, and they are so long, so many pages. It kept me hooked all the way through. So even though Zodiac Academy, undeniably, unequivocally terrible. They are enough of an enjoyable ride to rate some stars, whereas Crave, the whole Crave series was not. It's so bad from beginning to end. But then I ended up writing them all anyway because I had to know what happened. Terrible. Don't recommend. I mean, unless you want to get sucked in because you've seen it so many times and you're like, well, I've got nothing better to do. Then, go for it, but don't say that I didn't warn you. And the final fiction books on my list that was low stars, I think I gave this 2 stars, and I am glad that I kept going with the series because the rest of the series is way better, and that is Guild. It's the first one in the Plated Prisoner series, which is like a King Midas retelling. The first book is bad. I did not like that one at all. So many trigger warnings needed for that one, and it's just not, the story is not great. It's not well written. Just sort of throws you into the deep end with all the trauma, and I did not like that one. However, I heard a lot of people say that the rest of the series is so much better. So stick with it and just get through the first one. And I ended up doing that. And the rest, I agree that the rest of the series is better. I don't think any of them are 5-star reads for me, but they're definitely better than that first one, and enough that I wanted to keep reading and see what happens next. On to worst witchcraft reads of the year. I have 3 of them. First was Steampunk Magic. I just did not like that one. It's like a Wiccan system, like a Wiccan coven, but everything is steampunk, terminology and dress and tools that they use, but it's very much set up as a Wiccan coven. They just put a steampunk twist on it, and I just did not like it at all. I thought it was an interesting premise, but the book itself was just not great. It's just not really enough detail, or didn't make it that fun or interesting that I wanted to check out more of it. It was just the author saying, here's what my coven does and how they practice, and sometimes that can be a really interesting look, but in this case it was just a little bit boring, and then some of the stuff was just way over my head. I was I don't understand anything that is going on here, so that was a miss for me. The next that was a miss for me is Everyday Magic by Deborah Blake, and this one I actually think is popular. I think a lot of witches do like this one, but the reason I didn't like it, first of all, it says that it's not Wiccan and the author's not Wiccan, but a lot of this book is Wiccan, and I just generally don't like that in my books because I am not a Wiccan, and I think that it should be adequately billed in, say what is going to be in the book, and when it says it's not Wiccan and then it turns out to be, I really don't like that. And also, I did not like some of the content based on when it was published. So there's a lot in this book that by our standards and how we're kind of learning and dealing with things now would be considered cultural appropriation. And specifically, smudging with sage comes up, and a couple of other things, spirit guides, that were very common in books in the 90s, maybe even early 2000s, and people did not really consider that as cultural appropriation or anything inappropriate, because there are a lot of cultures that use sage and that use animals and animal spirits. However, the way the terminology is used, it's kind of been decided that is the Native American way of doing things and using that terminology, and so by saying it, you are not really part of that culture. So if you're not Native American, you may say oh, I'm cleansing my home with a sage smoke bundle, but it's just that phrase, smudging with sage, that we don't really use now because we know better. That it belongs to somebody's closed religion and closed practice. So things like that I forgive in books that are a lot older, because that's kind of how things were then, and we started to learn better, and then we do better. And so books that are written today, I expect that they do better because now we know, and we know better things. And I'm right there with it. When I started my practice, I would say all of those things and use that terminology because I didn't know better. So once you learn and you figure it out, you change. This book was written in 2015. That is too recent for this information to be in there and to be defended in the way that it is. I think by 2015, we knew better. So I didn't like it for those reasons. If you are Wiccan, you might like it more than me, and if you can overlook those things, you might like it more than me, but for me, it was one of the worst reads of my year. And the last one that I really didn't like, which was so disappointing, was The Untamed Witch. I had high hopes for that one. It looks really pretty, but it's not good on the inside. It's really disorganized. It's basic information, but it's pulled from a lot of sources, which is quoted, but it's basically that entire page is a quote of somebody else's work. So it's not really the author made it their own, or just cited where they were getting stuff from and then how they apply it to their practice. It's literally just block quotes of where they got that information from. So good that it's being cited, but it's just regurgitating information. So I already had that from the original sources, but just like the way that it was really like kind of set up just made me really not enjoy it. So I think I gave that like a 2-star read. It's got a lot of beginner or basic information in there, but I think there are much better resources for that out there that are much better organized and have like a clear point, which I don't think that this did. And I think that was a lot of talking about worst books of the year, considering I was trying to make this a quick section of my reading vlog. And there were not that many, but I think it's just something that's like about like ranting that I just get on a roll and I have so many things to say. So instead, let's jump into best books. And again, these are in no particular order. They are just books that I read this year, calendar year of 2023, whether or not they were published this year. And they are books that I gave 5 stars to on Goodreads. We'll start with fiction books and then go into the witchcraft books. Fiction books, Gideon the Ninth, the entire series. So there's Gideon, there's Harrow, and there is Nona, and then Electo is coming out next, hopefully sometime early 2024. I love this entire series. So I was talking to my sister-in-law at Super Bowl. We tolerate Super Bowl, but neither of us really like care that much if our teams aren't in it, and my team is the Bears, so it's just been like a horrible year, and I don't know when the Bears will ever be in the Super Bowl, if that will ever happen again in my lifetime. They have been twice in my lifetime. One time I was there as a baby when they were in the Super Bowl in New Orleans. I was just born. But other than that, I really don't have a lot of faith in them going back. So anyway, we spent a lot of the Super Bowl party sitting sort of in the back and talking about books and what we were reading and like our best reads. And she told me to read Gideon the Ninth, which her sister told her to read. And we all agree and are all obsessed with it. Gideon the Ninth is the best series. It's so good. I've talked about it on various book reviews and book recommendations before, so it should come as no surprise, but the whole series is fantastic. I love necromancers, I love Gideon, and I cannot wait for the next book to come out. Second that I gave 5 stars to, which possibly going to be an unpopular opinion, but is Hellbent by Leigh Bardugo. A lot of people, the first one is Ninth House and Hellbent is the second one, and I read both of them this year, and a lot of people do not like them, especially compared to her works, which are in the Grishaverse, the Shadow and Bone series, and the Six of Crows duology. People love those works and don't really like her other stuff. And Ninth House and Hellbent are way more like adult and darker, and I enjoyed Ninth House. I think I gave that one 4 stars, but Hellbent, the second one, is better than the first one, which does not always happen. So that is why Hellbent in particular is on my 5-star like best reads list. But I am a fan. I enjoyed it. I like her other work. She has a new book coming out called The Familiar, and I want to pick up that one too because I like when she writes. This is darker stuff. Next up, I gave 5 stars to both Legendborn and Bloodmarked. Bloodmarked is the second one in that series. And that follows, it's like a King Arthur sort of, not retelling because it's like King Arthur in the modern day. They're like saying that the characters in the book are the descendants of King Arthur. So they share his bloodline or the bloodline of his Knights of the Round Table. And when that allows them to have magical powers. And then when mystical bad things are happening, those powers are extra activated and they go to war against whatever bad, evil, mystical forces are out. So I really liked both of those. I thought they were great stories, really well written, great plot and pacing. I liked the characters, so I had fun with both of those. Gave both of them 5 stars, and I don't really have an opinion about King Arthur legend and lore either way. It's not like I love it, it's not like I hate it, just meh, like I don't know that much about it. So I really enjoyed it. I don't know if you would love it or hate it if you really know everything about King Arthur and all of that legends and lore, but since I don't and I have no feelings on it, I had a good time with both of those. Absolutely looking forward to the third one. Let me quickly knock out some fantasy reads that are kind of like in the similar vein. So that's Sorcery of Thorns, Little Thieves, One Dark Window. Loved all of those. All of those were 5-star reads. They have some sort of fantasy magical element. All of them were great. Nettle and Bone, can't recommend enough. In my book recommendations for Yule, I mentioned Wizard's Guide to Defensive Baking. That is also T. Kingfisher, and Nettle and Bone is T. Kingfisher. And Nettle and Bone is great, and she's got necromancer sort of powers, and she works with a bone witch, and she's got a little bone dog sidekick, and I love everything about that. And in a similar vein, this one is on Kindle Unlimited, and I have no idea how I found it or where it came up. I think I might have gotten it from Reads with Rachel here on YouTube. I love her. and I think this came from her, I'm not sure, but it is a series and it is called Witches Get Stitches. And it's so good. And I have so much fun with that. I think it is absolutely hysterical. The whole series is. They've got hilarious names too. Witches Get Stitches, Lich Please, like they're so good. But it is this story of this wizard collecting dark powers, and he has to kill everybody in this entire town in order to get this power of immortality for himself, but his spell goes awry and it bounces into this woman instead. So she wakes up in her undead body. She doesn't feel hot or cold. She doesn't need skin. So there's like bones sticking out. All is good. And she can't be killed. So rather than think like, what the hell is happening? Let's go find out. She's like, I want to stay here in my small little village and I'm going to bury these dead bodies in case I need their dead remains to reanimate one day. She just like fully jumps into this life. It's like, I'm going to live here in my little hut and I am going to bring my dead cat back to life and I'm going to have my little dead cat sidekick and I'm going to garden in my dead garden with my unalive bees, because you need dead zombie bees to fertilize your dead garden. Like it's so fun, and it's just the most ridiculous like storyline of how she's just like, yes, this is how I'm going to live my life now. This literal dead witch in the woods that has come back to life and has her little bone sidekicks. It's just so much fun, and it's similar to Nettle and Bone in that way. And then problems start to arise because there is like a religious cult that is, of course, like, no, we can't have this like undead witch living in the forest. That's not okay. And so they keep trying to attack her. And then she's like, well, I have to kill you now. And I don't want to kill you. That ruins my day. All I want to do is go to town and buy fabric and make myself really pretty dresses. And I don't know why you won't let me do that. I'm not bothering anybody. And so she does. And they come to attack her and she kills everybody. And it's just like a repeat process. And I have so much fun reading it. And it like really makes me laugh the entire story. So a lot of surprise, like fun winners there. If you have that same sort of sense of humor, definitely Kindle Unlimited, Witches Get Stitches, and Nettle and Bone by T. Kingfisher. I think you'll like both of those. And of course, a 5-star read was Fourth Wing. I loved it. I jumped right into that whole fantasy world. I have all of the Sarah J. Maas books and I love all of them, but I didn't read any of them in 2023, so those are like 2022 favorites. And Fourth Wing was sort of this fun like dive back into another fantasy world where I could get like completely wrapped up and lost for hours in this world of dragons and riders in War College. I read Iron Flame 2. Iron Flame I gave 4 stars to. That's the second book, just was not as good. Still great. Loved it. Looking forward to the rest of the series whenever that comes out. She said it's going to be 5 books, so looking forward to it. But the first one was definitely the 5-star read. On to best witchcraft books. I have read lots of great witchcraft books. I have lots of them that I gave 4 stars to, but I am going with the 5-star reads, and there are only 5 of them. But I say that with a caveat that I have not finished that book that I was showing, the Yule and Christmas herbs that I showed in the book recommendations video. I have not finished that one yet, so I haven't like officially given that a star rating on Goodreads, but that is creeping up there to potentially be a 5-star read. So when I finish that, I'll have to make my decision as I compare it to the rest of them, but I really am liking that one. Other than that, I will say Blood Sex Magic by Brie Luna. Won't go into that too much because she was just on the podcast right before Halloween, and her book came out on Halloween and we talked all about it, so you can refer to that, but that is a 5-star read. I love that one. One that surprised me, and I talked about this if you are a patron in the November book reviews, that I just recently read and surprised me as being a 5-star, which is The Wiccan Guide to Self-Care by Marie Bruce. I generally don't, like I said, love books that are Wiccan, say Wiccan in the title, but with this book, like I don't think Wiccan needed to be included in the title, because unlike the other one, Everyday Magic, this one is not actually Wiccan. I found very few things in there that were Wiccan, and if they were very easily adapted. But I thought that was a really good read, and it covers like the basic self-care stuff, so like manicures and baths and all that surface level stuff, but then there is a lot of true psychology and mental health and healing from various life events and traumas. And I thought that was incredibly interesting, really well written and researched. I was not expecting to like that one as much as I did, but I did give it 5 stars. I also gave 5 stars to The Way of 4 this year. That is by Deborah Lipp, who was also on the podcast, and we chatted specifically about this book. And it is a rewrite, like a reprint of her work that she put out in the early 2000s, but she has like updated it 4 times. And I had a lot of fun with it. I think because It is so detailed about using the 4 elements in a very practical way, so including them in your home and in your outfits and in your workplace. And there's so many quizzes that you take, and it's just like reminded me of being a kid with those like little magazines and taking your little quizzes in the magazines, which was always so much fun for me and my friends. Reminded me of that, where you like mark down your answers and then like see where you fall, and then she like gives advice based on what your answers were. And it's like a whole workbook like that, and I found that so much fun. But there are so many different ways to connect with the elements and like practical advice for bringing them into your life and into the different areas in your home. I especially loved it in like the outfits of like what fabrics correspond to air or earth and how to incorporate those in your outfit. So it's not just color, it's actual fabrics and stuff too. I thought it was all really great information. I had so much fun with it, and I find myself referencing it all the time. The other one that I loved, a patron recommended this to me, and that is The Witch's Apothecary, and ended up giving that one 5 stars as well. It's really pretty, has great visuals and illustrations in there. So I love like a pretty book, like a pretty cover and pretty photos, but then I love when the information in there actually matches. So you get both. You get the great written book and you get the great illustrations with it too, and this book had both. It's basically a book of like how to create your own apothecary, especially as it relates to the Wheel of the Year and how to make your own magical blends for yourself. So just lots of great resources on herbs and making oils, so many different recipes for different aspects and areas of your life. So I really enjoyed that one. And the last 5-star like read, I don't know if that's like a sit down and read book, but it is the Llewellyn's Complete Guide to North American Folk Magic. Llewellyn does a lot of complete guides. The Book of Correspondences is a very popular one that, again, chock full of great information. But this year they released this North American folk magic version, and it is spread up by all the different areas of North America and gives you all of the different folklore and legends that come from there, and then the different ways to incorporate it into your practice today. And I just thought it was fascinating because there is so much of my practice that comes from these North American traditions. We have historically gotten so much British information because a lot of it that we get in witchcraft comes from Wicca, and Wicca originated in the UK. So by default, a lot of what we have in witchcraft today is British Celtic based. So it is really nice to instead see how that blended with North America when all the people sort of moved here together and their practices intermingled, and how that became the folk practices that we have today. I love history, and I just really love knowing where that different information came from, those different practices came from. So I had a lot of fun with that one. But again, it's not like a sit down and read book. It's more like a reference book. That took a while to get through, but definitely 5 stars, and something that I enjoy having on my shelf to keep referencing back to. So those are my best and worst reads. I will have some things linked below. I'm obviously not going to link the worst books, because why? And I probably won't link the best fiction books because I think that those are ones that you're pretty familiar with or know where to find. I will link Liches Get Stitches because I want to make sure that you can find that one because I think it's so good. And I will link the witchcraft books because I know I did not mention an author for all of those. So I want to make sure that you are finding the right ones because a lot of witchcraft books have the same titles. So I will make sure that I link those. So that's everything for my best and worst books of the year. And I would definitely like to know what are your top reads for this year and what are your worst ones, and do you agree or disagree with anything on my list? So I think some of those books on my worst list, especially those first 2, are some people's like favorites. So I would love to know in the comments if you agree or totally disagree. Do let me know. And if there's anything that I missed that you think would be a 5-star read for me, absolutely let me know, because I read so much and I will look forward to adding that to my list for 2024. I can never have enough book recommendations. And now we are at the end of the video. So hopefully you enjoyed that. I know that this is a long one. So if you stuck around for the whole thing, thanks for being here. Happy Vlogtober Day 11, and I will see you tomorrow.